Okay, just a quick video for the uh, number files. Now, the Great Pyramid, and I'll put the link in the description. I did about phi in the Great Pyramid, but especially this connection to the 6/5 ratio, which is got so many important aspects. So measure, but also the ratio of the Great Pyramid and how for instance, the total height above ground and the maximum visible, including the subterranean, is this 6/5 ratio. How that also has applications to the cubit and the meter, but also for the geometricians and the importance of drawing an accurate pentagram, and drawing the perfect one is 6/5 ratio. That sort of brings us to the idealized measure of the Great Pyramid at this. Again, if you look at it as a three-dimensional object rather than a two-dimensional, and I'm glad to see it's catching on, but this 22:7 ratio rather than the two-dimensional with three-dimensional, and giving us a very close approximate of phi, basically matching the Archimedes description where he used essentially sacred geometry to create a 6, 12, 24, 48, 96-sided polygon, one inside a circle, one outside the circle. Then with Pythagorean theorem, he found out that 22/7 is a very good practical use of pi and this ratio, which brings us to something else, and that's 6/5 times 22/7 is 3.77 142,857 142,857. And that will now bring us to the Parthenon as one example, and how this system has been passed on through the ancient times to the modern era as well by the people who understand and still practice the craft. Now, for instance, the Parthenon, the Great Pyramid, what does it have in common? Well, it actually links to, for instance, elsewhere, later period of Egypt, Abu Simbel, but going back again to Mohenjo-Daro or Harappa, or the House of a Temple in the modern Masonic tradition, and even the Sydney Harbour Bridge by John Bradfield, another engineer and mason person who understood the craft. So back to the Parthenon and comparison with the Great Pyramid. So we have the idealized measures of 11 base over 7, giving us 11/7 is pi/2, good approximate. But how does that connect? Well, the columns of the Parthenon are at a ratio of 7 modular for the actual columns themselves, and including the architrave in this top section we have 3. So 11:3, which gives it a 3:11 ratio, which gives us 14 in total, but this 3:11 ratio also describes the proportions of the Great Pyramid. So 11, 14 the height, and then with this 11 ratio, and then we've also squared the circle. So the Parthenon, the Great Pyramid, and many other places I might add as well, as a proportion, but also as a measure, they're squaring the circle. But just sticking with the proportion here, so the Parthenon and the Great Pyramid are actually linked in several ways. Now, here we see this 3:11 ratio, which also gives us a definition of a ratio of size from the sun to the moon, but that's, the earth and the moon. But also we need to consider the Salamis stone, which shows that the allegedly modern English foot actually links to the Doric, the Ionic, as well as the Samian foot, I might add, as well as other units of ancient units of measure. But the point being that the entire height of a column, so when you measure a column, you should include the architrave portion there at the top as well, and that is 48 feet, or modern English feet as they're called, but they actually were in use back way back then. And why is that important? Because the 3:11 or 14:11 is 37.7142857 142,857 feet, which brings us back to the 6:5 ratio repeated throughout the pyramid and many other ancient structures. It's so important to geometry and metrology. And, well, 6/5 times 22/7 is 3.7142857 142,857. That same number we'll see repeated there as well. So if we go to Abu Simbel, 33 and 66 feet. In the Cremona scale, both of them convert to 37.7142857 cubits or span. So again, we're seeing this same set of digits repeated, 22 over 7 times 6 over 5. Mohenjo-Daro or Harappa, and well, so many others have covered these in previous videos, this use of 33 feet or 2 rods, and so that would be the same again as here, but also the House of a Temple modern Masonic tradition in Washington. And also consider the original, the older flood story, the Epic of Gilgamesh, where they describe the Ark, or the Preserver of Life. Okay, forget that 48 feet, that's a mistake there, that's just a crossover, it didn't got to do with the layers, but that's described as 10 times 120 cubits in height and equal sides and length, but 120 Royal Egyptian cubits is the equal at a 1.1 ratio is equal to 132 modern feet, which is 37.7142857 Cremona yards, which brings us to the John Bradfield Mason designed the Sydney Harbour Bridge. The whole building structure, across Sydney, is resplendent in this ancient numerical Pythagorean Platonic system, but 440 feet, and well, that's 377.142857142.857. The streets of Sydney or Canada, again, you'll find in many ancient structures, not just Abu Simbel, but 66 feet or 1 Gunter's chain or 2 Rathbone chain, 33 times 2 is 37.142.857 Cremona units. Now, the Cremona is an older unit which has fallen, but you have to go back to the 1800s to find the references to it. But that brings us back to Thoth, Hermes, Mercury, the gods of knowledge, the gods of weights and measure, and the Pythagorean school. Number is with all things, all is number, all is mind, all is consciousness. Number is a ruler of all forms and ideas, ruler, and the cause of gods and demons. And what we have is in the modern world, going back through time for all these people who knew the craft, knew their number and measure is a universal. It cannot be lost in translation, unlike other scripts, and it doesn't rely on interpretation. It is measurable, and it is repeated throughout history. And these very important geometric constructions connected geometry, geo, earth, metry, measure, geometry and metrology, or the study of measurement, just all joins in. That is Hermeticism. I know it's all popular out there, but then this the perversion of Hermeticism to turn it into basically this kumbaya stuff, and okay, maybe it is on its own, but amongst those schools, you never hear the importance of measure. Hermes, god of weights and measure. Mercury, god of weights and measure. Thoth, god of weights and measure. It is missing from these other descriptions in there, and therefore I consider it bunk, because it's not incorporating the essence of these schools. What is knowledge? Well, it's not psychology, it's measure. And when we just see it repeated in the structures, it's tangible, it's measurable, it's repeatable, again, across time. And it's just, unfortunately, it's been lost amongst this popularist, easy. We do these things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. And these things were done because they were hard, and they did them. And the systems of geometry, like scaling them to the earth, which is incorporated in the Parthenon and the Great Pyramid, which also incorporates the Hermetic constant of 2 to 3, or the other musical scales, which also lines up with astronomy, geometry and arithmetic and the quadrivium. And these things are measurable, tangible, testable, but they require some effort, they require discipline. And unfortunately, that's not cool anymore. And so, but what we have is that these methods, these measure systems, and these beautiful numbers, which the universal language. Universal, and by universal I mean universal. These rules apply. The beautiful rules of geometry and arithmetic are truly universal in the cosmic sense of the word. They are the universal language. And well, it's not, as soon as people hear math or geometry, but there it is, and it's there to be measured, it's there to be tested, and it is literally repeated across the ancient and the modern world by the people practicing the craft. And so there it is. You know who you are. Anyway, have a good one, and measure, and the truth shall set you free.